My son-in-law raised his glass on Christmas Eve and smirked. The best Christmas gift would be if you, Dad, just disappeared without a trace. My daughter quietly nodded and confirmed, yes, that would be the best. I smiled back and granted their wish. I secretly sold their house, packed my things, and left forever. And under the door I left a box. What they found inside shocked them to tears and destroyed their entire lives. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. You know what would be the best Christmas gift for all of us? Zach raised his wine glass, that smirk spreading across his face like oil on water. If Ken here just disappeared, vanished without a trace, like those people on the news who walk out one day and never come back. The Carters, my son-in-law's friends who'd shown up uninvited to my Christmas Eve dinner, laughed nervously. Tom Carter studied his plate with sudden intensity. His wife Linda discovered that the cranberry sauce was absolutely fascinating. I looked at my daughter Felicity, my only child, the girl I'd taught to ride a bicycle on Desert Rose Lane when she was 6, the woman who now sat across from me at my dining table in my house, eating the turkey I'd spent 6 hours preparing from scratch. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad, she said quietly, her fork pushing green beans around her plate in slow circles. Maybe Zach has a point. It might be better if you lived somewhere else. Separately. We've all been thinking about it. We've all been thinking about it. 5 words. 40 years of fatherhood, of birthday parties and college tuition, and being there for every scraped knee, reduced to an inconvenience discussed behind closed doors. My son-in-law, Zach's grin widened. At 41, he had the confidence of a man who'd never faced real consequences for anything. His pool service company's logo was plastered on the white van in my driveway, parked there rent-free like everything else in his life. See, Ken, even Felicity agrees. He took a long, theatrical sip of wine. My wine, from my cellar, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion. You're like that old couch nobody wants, but nobody throws out, just taking up space, gathering dust. Tom Carter shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Linda's smile had frozen into something painful. I set down my fork, the silver one from the set I'd purchased for my 30th wedding anniversary, back when this table saw happier meals. The turkey sat half-carved on the platter. My homemade pumpkin pie cooled on the kitchen counter, untouched by anyone but me. The gifts, I said, keeping my voice steady through sheer force of will. I nodded toward the carefully wrapped boxes under the Christmas tree. I'd spent $1,100 this year. A delicate silver bracelet for Felicity. She'd admired something similar in a magazine last month. A new chronograph watch for Zach, because I'd foolishly thought maybe this year would be different. Zach didn't even glance toward the tree. Another useless thing from the old man, I'm sure. Probably socks again. Tom Carter cleared his throat, desperate to fill the silence. Great turkey, Mr. Reed. Really excellent. I almost laughed at that. Almost. Instead, I rose from my chair. The wooden legs scraped against the hardwood floor, the same floor I'd refinished by hand in 2015, spending 3 weekends on my knees with sandpaper. I walked past the Christmas tree I'd decorated alone, while Zach and Felicity attended some party, past the kitchen where I'd cooked since dawn. Dad, Felicity's voice followed me, carrying that particular tone she used when she wanted something to just go away. I didn't turn around. My legs carried me down the hallway to my bedroom. It was the smallest room in the house now, the guest room, technically. Zach had decided last year that my original master bedroom would make a much better home office for him. More space for his desk, his filing cabinets, his sense of importance. I hadn't argued then. I should have. The door clicked shut behind me with a soft finality. I sat on the edge of my bed. The mattress creaked. It was 20 years old, like most things in my life that still functioned properly. On my nightstand, in a simple wooden frame, stood a photograph from better days. Felicity at her college graduation, smiling between her mother and me. My hand reached for it. I studied my daughter's face in the picture. Younger, kinder, before Zach had spent 12 years reshaping her into someone I barely recognized. Before she learned that keeping her husband comfortable required making her father invisible. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the photo face down on the nightstand. Something fundamental shifted in my chest. Not sadness. I'd moved past that somewhere between the appetizer and Zach's toast. The hurt remained, but it had crystallized into something harder, colder. 34 years I'd worked as chief accountant at Desert Freight Solutions. 34 years of balance sheets, audits, and meticulous planning. I understood how numbers operated, how complex systems could be unwound by finding a single loose thread. And right now, sitting in my own house where I'd been declared unwanted, something clicked into place. I'd been calculating the wrong equation entirely. From the living room drifted the sound of Zach's laughter. The Carters mumbled polite excuses and departed. I heard the front door close with obvious relief. Then Felicity's voice, low and soothing. "Don't worry about it, babe. He'll come around eventually. He's old and stubborn, but harmless. What's he actually going to do about anything?" What indeed? I stared at the overturned photograph, at the ceiling of this diminished room I'd been relegated to, at the walls of the house I owned free and clear, mortgage paid off in 2019. My house. My name alone on the deed. 100% my property. Zach thought I was merely a retired accountant, a piece of furniture to discard when convenient. He was about to discover that accountants excel at making things disappear. Sleep never came that night. Not from grief or self-pity. My mind was too busy running calculations. By 6 a.m. on Christmas morning, I'd mentally replayed the last 9 years like a film examined frame by frame. I was searching for the exact moment when I'd surrendered control of my own household, the precise decision that had transformed me from homeowner into unwelcome guest. It had happened gradually. That was the dangerous part. Small concessions accumulating like compound interest, working against you. At 8:15 a.m., Felicity's knuckles rapped against my bedroom door. "Dad, you're not in there sulking, are you? We were just being honest last night, thinking about everyone's future. You understand that, right?" I kept my voice carefully neutral through the wood. "Don't worry about me. I'm also thinking about the future." She paused outside the door. I could picture her standing in the hallway, rehearsing whatever reconciliation script Zach had provided. Some combination of "we love you but" and "it's for the best." Her footsteps eventually retreated toward the kitchen. I remembered clearly the afternoon she'd first introduced Zach. A brilliant Sunday 12 years ago. The desert sky impossibly blue. He'd crossed my threshold with athletic confidence, shaken my hand with practiced firmness, called me sir 3 times in 5 minutes. Felicity had practically glowed beside him. "He's ambitious, Dad," she'd confided after he'd driven away. "He's building something real. Duncan Pool Services is going to be huge." I'd harbored doubts even then. Professional skepticism was second nature after decades in accounting. His business plan contained projected revenues that ignored seasonality, labor overhead, and the reality that Henderson already had 14 established pool companies. The market was saturated, but Felicity had been happy. Genuinely, radiantly happy. That had outweighed everything else. The memory dissolved like morning frost. Worthless sentimentality now. I spent Christmas Day confined to my room, emerging only for water and bathroom visits. Through the walls, I heard Zach and Felicity watching movies in the living room, laughing. They ordered Chinese takeout for dinner around 7. They didn't knock on my door again, didn't offer to share. December 26th dawned gray and unseasonably cold for Henderson. I was standing in the kitchen around 10 a.m. preparing coffee when Zach's voice drifted from the garage. The connecting door stood slightly ajar, not enough for him to notice. I froze with my mug suspended halfway to the coffee maker. "Yeah, the old man's basically broken now. Christmas Eve finished him off." A harsh laugh echoing off concrete. "We'll have Felicity start pushing for the power of attorney next week. She's good at that, playing the concerned daughter worried about Dad's mental decline." My grip on the mug tightened until my knuckles whitened. "Once the POA is filed and approved, we transfer the house title to our names. Then we sell the place, pay off Vincent's loan, and Ken can spend his remaining years in whatever state facility will take him." Another laugh, uglier than the first. "No, he hasn't figured anything out. He's just a retired accountant, probably doing crossword puzzles right now." Power of attorney. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. They intended to take control of my finances, my decisions, my house. then sell everything I'd built over 40 years. My house, the one I'd purchased in 2001 for $320,000, the one I'd paid off over 18 years while Zach ran his business into financial ruin, the one currently valued at $847,000. They weren't merely cruel, they were calculated thieves executing a plan. I set down the coffee mug with exaggerated care and retreated silently to my room. My hands weren't shaking. They were absolutely steady. Accountant's hands. I once uncovered a $2.3 million embezzlement at Desert Freight because a manager grew careless with decimal points. 6 patient months building the case before presenting it to the board. That employee received 8 years in federal prison. Zach apparently considered himself clever. Zach had never encountered a forensic accountant who'd been personally insulted, but I required information first, and I couldn't search on my home computer. Zach had configured the Wi-Fi router, which meant he could monitor browsing history. At 2 p.m., I announced I was taking a walk to clear my thoughts. Neither Zach nor Felicity looked up from their phones. The Henderson Public Library was a 15-minute drive. I found a computer terminal in a corner alcove, away from windows. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Nevada property law, owner's rights, real estate sale, family consent requirements. The results populated the screen. I read with the meticulous attention I'd applied to thousands of financial documents. Nevada operated as a sole owner state. If property was deeded in one person's name, mine, that owner possessed complete authority to sell to anyone at any time without informing anyone else. I could legally sell my house within weeks. The computer screen glowed softly. Outside, Henderson continued its ordinary post-holiday routines, completely unaware that in a small alcove, a 67-year-old man was methodically researching how to vanish from his own life and take every asset with him. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I smiled. They wanted me to disappear? I would grant their wish with absolute precision. December 27th, the day after my revelation at the library, I returned home that evening carrying grocery bags, a deliberate prop. Zach barely glanced up from the television. Felicity offered a distracted wave from the kitchen island where she scrolled through her phone. "Picked up some things for dinner," I announced. "Whatever," Zach muttered. His eyes never left the sports channel. I observed him now with the cold precision of an auditor examining a suspicious ledger. The designer polo shirt, probably $200. The gold watch glinting on his wrist, a birthday gift to himself last year, charged to a credit card I suspected was maxed out. The way he sprawled across my leather couch like he owned it, because in his mind, he already did. I cooked dinner that night, pasta with marinara sauce, nothing elaborate. Zach complained about the lack of meat. Felicity apologized to him with her eyes, as if my cooking was somehow an offense against their sensibilities. "Maybe you should let Felicity handle the meals, Ken," Zach suggested between bites. "No offense, but this is pretty basic stuff." "None taken," I replied pleasantly. "I'll remember that." What I remembered instead, the interest rate he'd mentioned on the phone. 18%. Private lender. That meant desperation. Banks don't lend to people drowning in debt, so Zach had found someone willing to charge loan shark rates. December 28th, I called 3 real estate attorneys from my bedroom, speaking quietly with the door locked. The first 2 sounded competent, but cautious. They mentioned family mediation, suggested I consider my daughter's feelings, recommended I think it over before making hasty decisions. The third call changed everything. "Morales Law Office. This is Nina speaking." I explained my situation in broad strokes. Sole owner of a property. Adult family members living rent-free. Desire to sell quickly and confidentially. Nina Morales didn't suggest mediation. She didn't recommend I consider anyone's feelings. She asked exactly one question. "Is the deed in your name alone, Mr. Reed?" "Yes." "Then you have every legal right to sell. When can you come in?" Her office was located at 400 South 4th Street in Las Vegas, Suite 310, a modest space in a professional building. No pretension, just competence. Nina herself was perhaps 52, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and absolutely no patience for small talk. I liked her immediately. "Let me understand the situation," she said, reviewing the copies I'd brought. "Your daughter and son-in-law have lived in your home for 9 years. They pay no rent, no utilities, nothing toward the mortgage, which you've already paid off, and now you want to sell. Correct. May I ask why the urgency? I told her about the overheard phone conversation, the power of attorney scheme, the plan to have me declared incompetent. Nina's expression didn't change, but something hardened behind her eyes. Unfortunately, Mr. Reed, this isn't unusual. I've seen variations of this story dozens of times. Adult children who view aging parents as obstacles rather than family. Can they actually do it? The power of attorney? Not easily. They'd need medical documentation of mental incapacity, which, forgive me for being direct, you clearly don't exhibit. She closed the folder. However, I'd recommend we move quickly regardless. In Nevada, a sole owner can sell property without consent from any residence. The new owner would have grounds for a standard eviction notice, 30 days. How fast can we complete a sale? With a cash buyer and proper motivation, 2 to 3 weeks. I know several investors who might be interested. I wrote her a check for the $3,500 retainer without hesitation. December 29th brought another piece of the puzzle. I needed to understand exactly how deep Zach's financial hole actually was. Suspicion wasn't enough. I wanted documentation. The private investigator's office was deliberately unremarkable. A strip mall location between a nail salon and a sandwich shop. Dennis Fowler himself matched his surroundings. Mid-40s, forgettable face. The kind of man who disappeared into crowds. Background financial investigation, I explained. A business associate. Duncan Pool Services. Owned by Zachary Duncan. I need to know his true financial situation. Dennis quoted $2,500 for a comprehensive report. I paid in cash. 5 days, he promised. I'll have everything. Debts, liens, credit history, business filings. If he's hiding something, I'll find it. December 30th and 31st required the most difficult performance of my life, acting normal. I shuffled around the house in my usual patterns, made coffee in the morning, read the newspaper in my chair, retreated to my room by 8 each evening. Invisible. Harmless. Exactly what they expected. Zach grew increasingly confident. I caught snippets of his conversations with Felicity. They thought I'd given up. He's not even fighting back, Zach laughed. Probably relieved someone's finally making decisions for him. New Year's Eve arrived. They hosted a party. Friends I didn't recognize, drinking champagne I'd paid for, celebrating in rooms I'd maintained for decades. I excused myself at 10 p.m., claiming fatigue. No one objected. In my bedroom, I sat at the small desk I'd moved from the garage. A yellow legal pad lay before me, covered in my careful accountant's handwriting. A checklist. 14 items, methodically organized. The final entry read, "Leave gift at front door." I hadn't filled in the date yet. That would come later, when all the other pieces aligned. From the living room, I heard champagne corks popping. Someone cheered. Zach's voice rose above the noise. "To a great year. This is going to be our best one yet." I added a small notation beside item 14. January 2025. Then I turned off my lamp and listened to them celebrate their imaginary future. January 3rd, 2025. Dennis Fowler arrived at the library parking lot at 2 p.m. sharp, as arranged. He handed me a manila folder through my car window. "It's worse than I expected, Mr. Reed. Your son-in-law is underwater in ways I haven't seen in years." I opened the folder in my lap. The first page was a summary, bullet points of financial catastrophe. Duncan Pool Services owed $312,000 to a private investor named Vincent Russo. Interest rate, 18% annually. Payments had been irregular for the past 6 months. The company hadn't paid federal taxes in 8 months. The IRS had already sent 2 warning letters. Zach had taken a personal loan of $45,000, secured against business equipment that no longer existed, sold off piecemeal over the past year to cover operating expenses. And there on page 4, a detail that made me pause. Felicity Duncan was listed as a guarantor on a $78,000 credit line. My daughter had co-signed her husband's debts. "Vincent Russo," I said. "What do you know about him?" Dennis shrugged. "Private money guy. Operates out of Henderson. Not connected to anything illegal that I could find. But he charges rates that would make a bank blush. His wife, Maria, handles most of the paperwork. Word is, she doesn't always know where Vincent puts their money. I closed the folder. This is excellent work. One more thing. Dennis leaned closer. I talked to a former employee of Duncan Pool Services. The guy said Zach's been telling people he's coming into money soon. Family situation resolving itself. Those were the exact words. Family situation, meaning me. I drove back to Henderson with the folder locked in my trunk. The picture was now complete. Zach wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. His entire financial survival depended on acquiring my house, selling it, and using the proceeds to dig himself out of a $400,000 hole. No wonder he wanted me to disappear. January 5th, Nina called with news. I found a buyer. Russell Thompson, 58, dentist from California looking for investment property. He's relocating to Nevada for tax purposes and wants to close quickly. How quickly? He's offering $847,000, full market value, with a 14-day close. Cash deal, no mortgage contingency, no inspection delays. I did the math automatically. After Nina's fees, escrow costs, and standard closing expenses, I'd clear approximately $798,000. Combined with my savings and pension, more than enough to start over anywhere I chose. Accept the offer, I said. I'll prepare the purchase agreement. We can sign January 10th. January 7th. Zach cornered me in the kitchen. He'd put on his reasonable face, the one he used when he wanted something. I recognized it from years of watching him manipulate my daughter. Ken, got a minute? He pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, gesturing for me to sit, like it was his kitchen, his table. I sat. Look, I know Christmas was tense. He spread his hands in a gesture of reconciliation. Felicity and I have been talking. We think maybe we came on too strong. You know how it is. Holiday stress. Too much wine. I said nothing. Anyway, we were thinking, and this is just an idea, maybe it would help if you had someone managing your affairs. Not because you can't handle it, he added quickly. Just to take some pressure off. I could help with the bills, the accounts, the house stuff. All you'd need to do is sign a simple power of attorney, and I'd handle everything. He smiled. That confident, oily smile. Let me think about it, I said. Take your time, Ken. No rush. He patted my shoulder as he stood. We're family, right? Family takes care of each other. I watched him walk away, already reaching for his phone to text someone, probably celebrating his perceived victory. Family takes care of each other. I thought about that phrase, about what it meant, about what it should have meant. January 10th, 2:30 p.m. Nina's office. Russell Thompson sat across the conference table, a pleasant-faced man with the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent decades dealing with anxious patients. We shook hands. He asked no questions about why I was selling. I offered no explanations. The purchase agreement ran to 32 pages. I read every line, initialed every margin, signed every signature block. Nina notarized the documents with practiced efficiency. Escrow opens today, she announced. Closing date is January 24th. Funds will transfer within 24 hours of recording. Russell Thompson shook my hand again. I hope your next chapter is a good one, Mr. Reed. It will be, I said, one way or another. I walked out of Nina's office with a copy of the signed contract in my briefcase. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. My phone buzzed, a text from Felicity. Dad, where are you? Zach wants to talk about that paperwork. I typed my response carefully. Tell him I've changed my mind, about everything. Then I turned off my phone and drove home to begin the next phase. The game was no longer theoretical. The pieces were in motion. And Zach had no idea that the old accountant he'd dismissed as harmless was about to erase his entire future. January 11th. The clock was ticking. I walked into Bank of Nevada on Eastern Avenue at 9:15 a.m., 15 minutes after opening. The branch manager, a pleasant woman named Patricia, helped me open a new checking account, completely separate from my existing accounts at Wells Fargo. Will you need checks, Mr. Reed? Just the debit card, and I'd like to transfer $30,000 from my savings today. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. That's a significant amount. May I ask? Fresh start, I said with a smile that invited no further questions. The transfer completed by noon. $30,000, safely isolated from any account Zach might try to claim or freeze in the chaos to come. Over the next 4 days, I became a ghost in my own house, but a busy one. January 12th, I rented a storage unit at Henderson Storage on Stephanie Street. Unit 247, climate-controlled $89 per month. The clerk barely glanced at my ID. January 13th, while Zach was at his failing office and Felicity worked her shift at the hotel, I loaded my car with the first batch of irreplaceable items. Photo albums spanning 40 years. My collection of jazz vinyl. 63 records, including a first pressing of Miles Davis that I'd owned since 1972. Tax documents. The deed to my parents' grave plot. January 14th, second trip. More photographs, my father's pocket watch. The wooden chess set I'd carved myself during a woodworking phase in my 50s. January 15th, third and final trip. Personal papers, medical records. The folder Dennis Fowler had given me, containing every detail of Zach's financial catastrophe. Each trip I timed precisely. Zach left for work around 8:30. Felicity departed by 7:15. I had a window of roughly 9 hours to move freely, the storage unit filled with the tangible remains of my life. Everything else, the furniture, the kitchen items, the house itself, was just material, replaceable. The memories were safe now. January 16th, I drove to the Desert Oasis Inn on Boulder Highway. The motel wasn't glamorous, 2 stars at best, with a parking lot full of construction workers' trucks and traveling salesmen's sedans, perfect for someone who wanted to disappear. 2 weeks, I told the clerk, sliding $120 in cash across the counter. Room facing the back lot, if possible. Room 14, ground floor, away from the street, with a view of absolutely nothing interesting. Exactly what I needed. January 18th, the first sign of trouble. I returned home that evening to find Zach, standing in my bedroom doorway, arms crossed. "Ken." His voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. "Your room looks different." I brushed past him, setting my jacket on the bed. "Spring cleaning." "In January?" He scanned the space. The empty bookshelf where my vinyl collection had stood. The bare nightstand where family photos once gathered dust. "Where's all your stuff?" "Donated some things, threw out others." I met his eyes without flinching. "Simplifying?" His jaw tightened. I could see him calculating, trying to determine if this disrupted his plans. "You're not thinking of going somewhere, are you?" "Where would I go, Zach? I'm just an old man, remember?" He stared at me for a long moment. Then his expression smoothed back into practiced friendliness. "Right, of course. Just checking." That night, I heard him talking to Felicity in the kitchen, voice low but urgent. "Something's off with your father. He's acting strange. We need to move faster on the paperwork." Felicity's reply was muffled, but I caught the tone. Dismissive, unconcerned. "He's just being dramatic. Let him pout. He'll come around." I smiled in the darkness of my room. Let them believe that. January 20th. Nina called with confirmation. "Escrow closes January 24th, as scheduled. All documentation is in order. Mr. Thompson's funds are verified and ready for transfer." "And the amount?" "After all fees and closing costs, $798,180. It'll hit your new account within 24 hours of recording." January 22nd, the final preparation. I sat at my small desk with a large brown cardboard box before me. Inside, I carefully arranged the items that would shatter Zach's world. First, a certified copy of the grant deed, transferring ownership of 2847 Desert Rose Lane from Kenneth Reed to Russell Thompson. Legal, binding, irreversible. Second, a formal notice from Russell Thompson, the new owner, informing current occupants of a 30-day eviction deadline. Third, Dennis Fowler's complete financial report on Zachary Duncan, every debt, every lie, every desperate scheme laid bare in black and white. Fourth, a handwritten note from me. I wrote slowly, choosing each word with the precision of a man composing his final statement. "Dear Felicity and Zachary, on Christmas Eve you told me the best gift would be my disappearance. I've always tried to be a good father and father-in-law, so I've decided to grant your wish. I disappeared. And I took my house with me. January 23rd, 11:47 p.m. The house was silent. Zach and Felicity had gone to bed an hour ago. I'd heard their bedroom door close, heard the television fall quiet. I stood in my room one final time, surveying the space that had shrunk around me over the years, the walls that had witnessed my slow transformation from homeowner to unwanted tenant. My suitcase was already packed. One bag, that's all I needed for the life ahead. I picked up the brown box from my desk. It was heavier than its contents suggested, weighted with 9 years of accumulated grievances and 30 days of meticulous planning. The hallway stretched before me, familiar and foreign simultaneously. I walked it slowly, memorizing the texture of the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the door frames I'd weathered countless storms behind. The back door opened without a sound. I'd oiled the hinges 2 days ago, anticipating this moment. The desert night wrapped around me, cold and clear. Stars scattered across the Nevada sky like spilled salt on black velvet. I circled to the front of the house and placed the box carefully on the doorstep. Centered, impossible to miss. Then I stood there, looking at the home I'd owned for 23 years. You wanted me to disappear, I whispered into the darkness. Wish granted. I drove to the Desert Oasis Inn with my windows down, the January air sharp against my face. Room 14 welcomed me with its anonymous beige walls and its complete absence of history. I slept better than I had in months. January 24th, 7:30 a.m. Somewhere across Henderson, Felicity was waking up, walking to the kitchen, starting the coffee maker, finding the box. I pictured it clearly, her confusion at first, wondering who had left a package on the doorstep, calling for Zach, his irritation at being summoned before his second cup of coffee, the lid coming off, the grant deed on top, that official document with its stamps and signatures and irreversible legal weight. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. Nina Morales. It's done, Mr. Reed. The sale recorded this morning. Funds are transferring now. Thank you, Nina. For what it's worth, I hope this gives you the fresh start you deserve. At 9:47 a.m., my phone exploded. 17 missed calls from Felicity, 12 from Zach. A cascade of text messages, each more frantic than the last. Dad, what is this? Call me now. This isn't legal. You can't do this. Dad, please. I read each message with the detachment of a scientist observing an experiment. Their panic was almost musical, rising in pitch and desperation with each unanswered attempt to reach me. At 10:15, a voicemail from Zach. I played it on speaker, savoring every syllable. Ken, listen to me. His voice cracked on the edges. That smooth confidence shattered into jagged fragments. This is insane. You can't just... We live here. Felicity's your daughter. You need to call us back right now and explain what... This has to be some kind of mistake. Some kind of... Call me. Now. I saved the voicemail. It would make excellent listening on difficult days. January 25th through 27th unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. Zach consulted lawyers. The lawyers delivered identical verdicts. The sale was legal, binding, and absolutely final. Kenneth Reed had been the sole owner. Kenneth Reed could sell to whomever he wished. The new owner had every right to evict the current occupants. Felicity tried a different approach. She called my phone 43 times on the 26th alone, leaving messages that progressed from angry to pleading to desperate. Dad, I know we said things we shouldn't have. I know Christmas was hard. But this is too far. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. We can work something out. I listened to each message. I responded to none. January 27th, 3:15 p.m. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered. Is this Kenneth Reed? A woman's voice, sharp, controlled, with an undercurrent of barely suppressed fury. Speaking. My name is Maria Russo. I believe you know my husband Vincent? I smiled. I know of him, Mrs. Russo. We've never met personally. Someone sent me some very interesting documents about a loan my husband made, $312,000 to a man named Zachary Duncan. Her voice tightened. My husband told me that money was in a CD at the bank, a safe investment. Now I find out it went to some pool cleaner with a failing business and a father-in-law who just sold the house out from under him. That does sound troubling. Mr. Reed, I don't know why you sent me those papers, but I want you to know I'm going to get every penny back. Your son-in-law is going to learn exactly what happens when you take Maria Russo's money. I wish you the best of luck, Mrs. Russo. The call ended. I set down my phone and looked out the window of room 14 at the desert afternoon. Somewhere across town, Zach and Felicity were discovering that their problems had just multiplied exponentially. The dominoes were falling, and I had barely begun to push. January 28th. The counterattack began. Nina called me that morning with an update. Your son-in-law hired an attorney, Harold Weston. I know him. Decent enough lawyer, but he takes desperate cases for quick retainers. What's their angle? Mental incapacity. They're going to argue you weren't competent to sell the property? Dementia, undue influence, something along those lines. I laughed, a genuine, full laugh that surprised even me. Mental incapacity, that's creative. It's also hopeless. You have no diagnosis, no medical history of cognitive decline. The sale was clean, documented, witnessed by professionals, but they might drag it out for months if they file. Let them try. Meanwhile, across Henderson, Felicity was having a very different kind of meeting. I learned the details later, pieced together from various sources. Maria Russo had summoned Felicity to a coffee shop on Green Valley Parkway. Neutral territory, but Maria's choice. Maria Russo was 54 years old, the daughter of a construction contractor, and possessed the particular fury of a woman who just discovered her husband had been lying about their investments for 3 years. $312,000, Maria said, sliding a folder across the table. My husband's personal savings, our retirement buffer, gone to your husband's pool company. Felicity's face went pale. I didn't know the amount was. Vincent told me it was in certificates of deposit. Safe. Boring. Instead, he gave it to some smooth-talking idiot who can't even keep his father-in-law's house. Maria leaned forward. I want my money back, Mrs. Duncan. Every penny. With interest. We don't have. Then find it. Sell something. Sell everything. Because if I don't see a payment plan by next week, my attorney files suit, and trust me, I'll take everything you own down to the last fork. January 29th through February 3rd unfolded like a chess game played by desperate amateurs against a patient professional. Zach's attorney, Harold Weston, filed requests for my medical records. My doctor, a thorough man I'd seen annually for 15 years, provided a clean bill of health, no dementia, no cognitive decline, no medications affecting judgment. Weston searched for witnesses who might testify to my erratic behavior. He found none. The members of my chess club at Silver Knights described me as sharp, strategic, and pleasant. My former colleagues at Desert Freight Solutions called me meticulous and reliable. Nina Morales provided Weston with complete documentation of our consultations, timestamps, notes, signed acknowledgments, everything by the book. The legal case against me was crumbling before it even began. February 4th brought the formal eviction notice. Russell Thompson, the new owner of 2847 Desert Rose Lane, sent the required 30-day notification via certified mail. The letter was professional, impersonal, and devastating. Vacate the premises by March the 6th, 2025. I imagined Zach's face when he opened that envelope, the realization that this wasn't a nightmare he could wake from. This was his new reality. February 5th, they found me. I was in room 14 of the Desert Oasis Inn, reading a paperback mystery when the pounding started. Open up, old man. We know you're in there, Zach's voice, hoarse with rage, stripped of all pretense. I set down my book, straightened my shirt, and walked to the door. When I opened it, they stood in the harsh afternoon light, like refugees from their own lives. Zach's face was flushed red, veins visible at his temples. Felicity stood slightly behind him, mascara streaked, clutching her purse like a shield. Zachary! Felicity! I leaned against the doorframe, perfectly calm. What a pleasant surprise. Though I notice you're not visiting me at my house anymore? Oh, wait, it's not my house anymore, and it's definitely not yours. You think this is funny? Zach stepped forward. You destroyed us. I sold my property, legally, to a qualified buyer for fair market value. I smiled. Everything else that's destroying you? That's your own construction, Zachary. Felicity pushed past her husband. Dad, please, we can fix this. Whatever you want, an apology, money, anything. Just call off the sale. Tell Thompson to give back the house. The sale is final, has been for 2 weeks, and even if it weren't. I paused, letting the silence stretch. Why would I help you? You told me to disappear. You planned to steal my house through a fake power of attorney. You called me a piece of furniture. We'll sue you, Zach shouted. Emotional distress, elder abuse, whatever it takes. I stepped back inside my room. Sue away. My lawyer is very good, and unlike you, I can actually afford her. The door closed on their shocked faces. That night, I called Nina. They found my location. I think it's time to move. I have an apartment lined up, West Sunset Road. You can move in Saturday. Perfect. I paused. And Nina? Thank you. For everything. Mr. Reed, I've handled a lot of cases. Yours is the most satisfying I've worked in years. February 8th. I moved into apartment 214 at 8500 West Sunset Road. The building was unremarkable, a mid-rise complex with adequate security and anonymous neighbors who minded their own business. The rent was $850 per month, paid from my new Bank of Nevada account. No forwarding address filed. No trace for Zach to follow. The apartment had 2 bedrooms, one of which I converted into a small office. I set up my record player on a side table, arranged my vinyl collection on new shelves, and hung my chess club tournament photo on the wall. For the first time in 9 years, I had a space that was entirely mine. February 10th. Maria Russo made good on her threat. The civil lawsuit arrived at Zach and Felicity's, soon to be former, address via process server. The complaint named both of them as defendants, seeking $312,000 in principal, $4,730 in accrued interest, and $19,220 in legal fees. Total, $378,450. The Russos weren't playing games. February 12th. Harold Weston delivered the bad news to his client. I learned about this conversation through Nina, who had contacts throughout Henderson's legal community. Apparently, Weston was blunt. Mr. Duncan, there's no case here. Your father-in-law committed no crime, violated no law, breached no contract. He sold his own property. That's not actionable. There has to be something. There isn't. And if you file a frivolous lawsuit, you'll be paying his legal fees on top of everything else. Zach fired Weston that afternoon, then hired him back the next morning, having failed to find anyone else willing to take the case. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Instead of roses and dinner, Zach and Felicity received a certified letter from the IRS. Duncan Pool Services owed $67,304 in unpaid federal taxes. Additional penalties and interest brought the total to $79,790. Payment due within 30 days. The walls were closing in. February 15th through 18th. I monitored from a distance as their world continued to collapse. Zach visited 3 banks seeking emergency loans. All 3 declined, his credit score had cratered, and he had no collateral left. He called former clients, asking for advance payments on future work. Most didn't return his calls. The few who did refused. His own parents, retired teachers living in Phoenix, told him they'd warned him about the pool business years ago. They had no money to spare. February 19th. Felicity requested a meeting. She'd gotten my new number somehow, probably through persistence and social engineering. The text was simple. Dad, please, coffee. Just us. Sunrise Coffee on Charleston, 2 p.m. I went. She looked older than her 38 years. Dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled. The polished procurement manager had disappeared, replaced by someone barely holding together. Dad, she reached across the table, then withdrew when I didn't respond. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know what we did was wrong. Is that an apology? Yes, I'm sorry. I should never have said those things at Christmas. I should have defended you against Zach. I should have, didn't. I sipped my coffee. What do you want, Felicity? Help. Please. We're losing the house in 2 weeks. Zach's business is finished. Maria Russo is going to take everything we have left. I don't know what to do. I studied my daughter, the child I'd raised, the woman she'd become, the stranger she'd chosen to be. You came here to ask for money. I came here because you're my father. A father you told to disappear at Christmas, in front of guests. I set down my cup. You didn't come to apologize, Felicity. You came because you're desperate. There's a difference. That's not... When you showed up at my motel room, did you apologize? No. When you called 43 times in one day, did any of those messages contain an apology? No. I stood, leaving money for the coffee. You want to know the worst part? If you had come to me with genuine remorse, real accountability, I might have considered helping. But you didn't. You came with demands and expectations, just like always. Dad, please, tell Zach something for me. I remember every word he said at that Christmas dinner, every insult, every sneer. He called me an old couch taking up space. I pulled on my jacket. Now he's about to find out what it feels like to be thrown out. February 20th, the final escalation. A process server found me at my apartment. Zach had apparently hired someone competent. The envelope contained a lawsuit. Zachary Duncan versus Kenneth Reed. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages sought, $500,000. I read through the complaint twice, then called Nina. They're suing me for emotional distress. I saw the filing. It's desperate and it's stupid. Can they win? Not a chance. But they can waste your time and money if you let them. She paused. I know an excellent litigation attorney, Nathan Price. He doesn't lose cases like this. I scheduled a meeting for the next morning. Zach wanted a fight. I'd been preparing for this battle for 2 months. He'd been preparing for it for 2 days. The advantage was entirely mine. February 21st. Nathan Price's office occupied the 12th floor of a glass tower on Las Vegas Boulevard. Nathan himself was 55, silver-haired, with the calm intensity of a man who'd spent 30 years destroying opponents in courtrooms. His retainer was $7,500. I wrote the check without hesitation. Let me understand this correctly, Nathan said, reviewing the complaint. Your son-in-law publicly humiliated you, planned to steal your house through a fraudulent power of attorney, and is now suing you for emotional distress? That's the summary. Nathan laughed, a genuine appreciative sound. Mr. Reed, this isn't just a frivolous lawsuit. It's a gift. We're going to countersue for malicious prosecution, and we're going to win. Decisively. February 24th. Preliminary hearing at Clark County District Court. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected. Wood-paneled walls, fluorescent lighting, the Nevada State SIL mounted behind the judge's bench. Judge Eleanor Grant presided, a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s who radiated no-nonsense authority. Zach sat at the plaintiff's table with Harold Weston. My son-in-law looked diminished somehow, thinner, paler, the confidence stripped away like cheap paint. Felicity sat in the gallery behind him, clutching her purse. I sat beside Nathan at the defendant's table, perfectly calm. Weston opened with practiced solemnity. Your Honor, Mr. Reed deliberately and maliciously deprived my client of his home, knowing full well the devastating financial and emotional consequences. This wasn't a simple property transaction. It was calculated cruelty designed to destroy a family. Nathan rose. Your Honor, my client sold his own property, legally, to a willing buyer, at fair market value. Mr. Duncan was never a co-owner, never paid rent, and had no legal claim to the residence whatsoever. But surely, Weston interrupted, there's a moral obligation. Moral obligation? Nathan's voice sharpened. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Duncan planned to defraud my client through a fabricated power of attorney, with the intention of stealing the very property he now claims emotional attachment to. Judge Grant leaned forward. Evidence? Nathan presented our documentation, the audio recording of Zach's phone conversation from December 26th, legally obtained under Nevada's one-party consent law. Dennis Fowler's sworn affidavit detailing Zach's financial schemes. The timeline showing how the power of attorney plot aligned with the Christmas Eve confrontation. Zach's face drained of color as the recording played through the courtroom speakers, his own voice captured in my garage. The old man's basically broken now. We'll get the POA through Felicity, then sell the place and pay off Vincent. Judge Grant's expression hardened. Mr. Weston, were you aware of this evidence before filing? Weston shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, my client assured me. Your client apparently assured you of many things that aren't true. She set down her pen. I'm setting the full hearing for March 5th. Mr. Duncan, I strongly suggest you reconsider this litigation. February 27th through March 4th. Zach's world continued its collapse. Weston called him 3 times, urging him to withdraw the lawsuit. You're going to lose. Badly. And you'll be paying their legal fees. Probably $15,000 or more. Zach refused. His pride, apparently, was worth more than his remaining assets. Meanwhile, the eviction deadline approached. Russell Thompson's attorneys sent daily reminders. March 6th, vacate or face forcible removal. March 5th, the day of reckoning. 2 events, separated by 3 hours. Both devastating to my son-in-law. 8 a.m., 2847, Desert Rose Lane. I wasn't there. I'd made a point of staying away. But I received a detailed account from Nina, who'd driven past out of professional curiosity. A Clark County sheriff's vehicle sat in the driveway. 2 deputies stood on the lawn, watching as Zach and Felicity carried boxes to a rented U-Haul. Russell Thompson observed from the porch of what was now his property. The house looked the same as always. Beige stucco, red tile roof, the desert landscaping I'd maintained for 20 years. But it wasn't mine anymore, and it certainly wasn't theirs. Felicity was crying. Zach moved mechanically, his face blank, carrying furniture he'd lounged on for 9 years while contributing nothing. By 10 a.m. they were gone. The deputies filed their report. Russell Thompson changed the locks. 11 a.m. Clark County District Court. This time, the courtroom felt different. Charged. Final. Zach looked like he hadn't slept in days. His suit was wrinkled, his tie askew. He kept rubbing his hands together, a nervous tic I'd never noticed before. I sat beside Nathan wearing my best charcoal suit, calm as a chess player approaching checkmate. The hearing proceeded quickly. Weston made a half-hearted argument about family bonds and moral duties. Nathan systematically demolished every point, citing case law, presenting evidence, painting a picture of a scheming son-in-law who'd tried to steal from his own father-in-law and was now using the legal system as a weapon of spite. Zach interrupted twice, once to shout that I was destroying his family, once to insist that I owed him for years of being part of his household. Judge Grant silenced him both times. Her patience was clearly exhausted. At 11:47 a.m., she delivered her ruling. The court finds that the plaintiff's complaint lacks any legal merit. Furthermore, the evidence presented suggests this lawsuit was filed in bad faith, as a form of retaliation against the defendant for exercising his lawful property rights. Judge Grant continued, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom. The complaint of Zachary Duncan against Kenneth Reed is hereby dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, the court finds that this filing constitutes an abuse of process. Mr. Duncan is ordered to pay the defendant's legal fees in the amount of $14,200. Zach shot to his feet. This is insane. He's my father-in-law. He had a responsibility. Mr. Duncan? Judge Grant's tone could have frozen the Nevada desert. Sit down. He didn't. You don't understand. He took everything from us. Our home. Our future. I understand perfectly. The judge removed her glasses. Mr. Reed sold his own property. He was under no legal obligation to provide free housing to adult family members. The fact that you apparently planned to defraud him of that property makes your complaint here today not just frivolous, but offensive to this court. But, furthermore, the sale has been examined and found to be completely lawful. Mr. Reed was competent, acted voluntarily, and received fair market value. There is nothing to challenge. She replaced her glasses. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell like a guillotine blade. I watched Zach's face as the reality hit him. First came disbelief, his eyes widening, his mouth falling open. Then confusion, as if the words hadn't quite reached his brain. Then finally, the crushing weight of understanding. He'd lost. Completely. Irrevocably. His hands trembled at his sides. The color drained from his face until he looked almost gray under the fluorescent lights. The confident man who'd raised a champagne toast to my disappearance 3 months ago had evaporated, leaving behind a hollow shell who'd just watched his last desperate gamble explode in his face. Felicity rushed forward from the gallery, grabbing his arm, whispering urgently. He shook her off with a violent jerk, the first crack in their united front. I rose from my seat, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. No hurry, no gloating, just quiet satisfaction. Dad! I turned. Felicity stood in the aisle, tears carving tracks through her makeup. Zach remained frozen at the plaintiff's table, staring at the spot where Judge Grant had sat. Dad, please. What happens now? I looked at my daughter, the girl I'd taught to ride a bicycle, the woman who'd sided with her husband when it mattered most, the stranger who'd told me to disappear on Christmas Eve. Now you live your life, without my house, without my money, without me. Will you ever forgive us? The question hung in the air. I considered it carefully, as I'd considered every decision over the past 3 months. I don't hate you, Felicity. I'm not even angry anymore. I paused, but I'm also not going to pretend that Christmas didn't happen. You wanted me to disappear. I disappeared. Now you deal with the consequences. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Behind me, I heard Felicity's choke sob. I didn't stop. The weeks that followed brought the complete collapse of everything Zach had built. March 7th, Duncan Pool Services filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The 2 remaining work vans, already seized by Maria Russo's attorneys, were sold at auction for pennies on the dollar. The business that was supposed to be huge ended with a whimper and a stack of legal documents. March 8th, Zach and Felicity moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a run-down complex off Boulder Highway. Rent, $400 per month, nearly everything Felicity earned at her hotel job, from a 4-bedroom house to a single room with stained carpets and paper-thin walls. March 10th, Felicity filed for divorce. I learned about it through public records, not from her directly. Perhaps she'd finally realized that the man she'd chosen over me wasn't worth choosing at all. March 12th. I treated myself to lunch at Vintner Grill in Summerlin. The restaurant was quiet at 2 p.m. White tablecloths, soft music, a view of the mountains through floor-to-ceiling windows. I ordered salmon, a glass of wine, and took my time. A young waitress stopped by my table. "Are you celebrating something today, sir?" I smiled. "You could say that. I'm celebrating justice." She didn't understand, of course, but that was fine. The satisfaction was mine alone. March 15th, Saturday afternoon. I sat in my apartment, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. My record player spun a Miles Davis vinyl, Kinda Blue, the album I'd owned since 1972. On the wall hung a new photograph, me with my friends from the Silver Knights Chess Club, taken at last month's tournament. I'd placed second. Not bad for a 67-year-old old couch. The apartment was quiet, peaceful, mine. My phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Felicity. I watched it ring, watched her name pulse on the display, wondered what she wanted, an apology, money, absolution. I set the phone face down on the table and let it ring to voicemail. Maybe someday we'd talk again, maybe not. That decision could wait. For now, I closed my eyes and listened to the music. The trumpet notes floated through the room like smoke, beautiful and ephemeral. I'd spent 9 years being invisible in my own home, being tolerated, being dismissed as furniture. Now I had $798,000 in the bank, a comfortable apartment, friends who valued me, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served. Zach had wanted me to disappear. I had, and I'd taken everything with me. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.